Welcome to How to Succeed During a Pandemic. Hi, I'm Wendy Lalli, your host, and I'm delighted that you could join us today. The premise of this show is very simple. We talk to people who are not only managing to survive, but actually thrive during this era that I call the era of COVID-19. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges involved in the life we live today, but yet many of us are managing to do very well. And we thought it would be a good idea to talk to them and find out how they're doing it, and maybe share some of those insights with the rest of us so we could follow suit. My business is copywriting. So I interview people all the time about their businesses and what their lives are like, and help them market whatever it is they do. So this show is kind of a natural fit for me. Originally, it was solely about business. It was called How to Succeed in Business During a Pandemic, but there's so many other things that this pandemic is doing to our lives that we thought we would broaden the focus of the show, and we also took it from 15 minutes to half an hour. Today, I have two gentlemen with me who are old friends and have businesses that are very different from each other, and yet they're both concerned about making their customers feel more secure. And certainly that's a goal of all of us during this time. Neal Wankoff is the owner of Prairie IT Services, and he's going to talk to us about cybersecurity. Don Bally is the representative of, I want to get the name of the business right, Don. It's alarm detection systems. I keep wanting to say detection alarm systems because it has to do with alarms.
That works.
And he's been doing that for many years, is very good at it. And I thought it would be interesting to hear what the world looks like from his perspective. I went on the site, Don, and I was just fascinated because it was like this James Bond movie. There were so many intriguing gizmos there that I want to ask you about today. So now I'm going to let these gentlemen talk for themselves and introduce themselves and tell how they got to do what they're doing and how this particular time that we're all going through is affecting their business and their lives. Don, why don't we start with you?
Okay.
So why don't you start? Give us your elevator speech about how you got started in the alarm business. I know you're a great salesperson. Was that always your what you sold, or were there other things before this?
Well, in 1983, I was a refugee from the steel industry. I was VP for a mill that closed, and I collected my first and only ever unemployment check. My wife, who was working in the alarm industry for a franchise company, convinced me to buy a franchise. So I wrote a check for $10,000 and spent a couple of months in intensive training to learn about residential sales, residential and small commercial sales. And I started, started my own company in 1984. So what is that now? 37 years I've been in the business. Sold my business to Alarm Detection Systems in 2002. So I was on my own for 18 years and built up an account base of about 2,200 accounts. We were doing very well.
That's
I just
great.
got a great offer that I couldn't turn down.
And Neal, how about you?
Well, I always had an interest in computers when I was younger. I had a computer, and this is well before, common desktops. And I had a computer when I was 13. I used to look at my brother's punch cards. I guess that dates me a little bit too. And I always had interest. Ended up kind of falling away from that, and then got out of college, got a job, sat down at a desk, and there was a PC there, and I just took to it. I was comfortable with it, and sort of became the go-to person in the company, small business, for computer questions and other problems. And then decided that I'd make a go of being in IT from there. So been doing it now for over 20 years. And in 2014, after being the IT manager at a commercial real estate company in the Chicago area, they were downsizing after the Great Recession, and they said, well, why don't you start up your own business and we'll be your first clients. So 6.5 years later, still in business, and it's been growing.
Well,
Great.
that's quite a deal. Good for them and good for you.
Thank you.
But that still, even though they were, volunteered to be your clients, that still must have been quite a leap to go from working for a company and going on your own.
Sure. And I'm fortunate to have a very supportive spouse who has good insurance. And as small business owners know, that can be a big challenge these days with health insurance. So having her support has been, made this all possible.
Don, how about you? When you how are you servicing customers? If you do you go to their place of business or their homes still now, or is it on the phone and remote, or how do you do that?
Well, I do no face-to-face prospecting, but I do go out on appointments, most of which today are coming from the office. But I do make other appointments through networking and referrals, but I'd say it's about 50-50 between the office and what I'm doing in the way of self-generation. I don't do any face-to-face prospecting.
Okay, when you go in, how does that? I mean, you told me you had a training. You did have $10,000 worth of training in
Right.
the alarm system business, but do you like go to someone's home and say, I think you should have this or that, or is that you kind of make an appointment for someone else to do that?
Well, 90% of break-ins are through doors, so it's a given that we're going to protect the doors. But just in case somebody picks a window, we put a motion detector inside the house. That's a device that picks up body temperature. And we can even get away with dogs and sometimes cats today without there being false alarms, I should say. And I always make a pitch for smoke detectors. I was trained to sell fire protection, and I'd say in 90% of the cases, I sell smoke detectors as part of the alarm system.
I always thought everybody had a smoke detector, that was a given as like part of your way to live. I mean, your home.
Yeah, but they don't call anybody. I mean, if you're not at home and there's a fire, the kind that you buy at the hardware store or at the electrician put in are not monitored.
Oh, I see.
So, for example, if you have a dog,
Right.
Kevin,
That's right.
if there's a fire and you're not at home, I mean, Kevin's life is in danger.
Hear that, Kevin? I never thought of that. Let me see. Are there any? Tell me something, Don. Do you have favorite things? Well, you told me you sell the smoke detectors, but aside from that, is there? Are there other products that you really think everyone should have? I'm fascinated by the door ring thing, where people have a camera and
The doorbell cameras,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We install a lot of those. They're manufactured, but the ones we sell are manufactured by Honeywell. But it's the same thing as the ring. They detect motion. In fact, if I come to your door, I don't have to ring the bell in order for you to get notification. I just have to be within 10 feet of the door.
Yeah, I've seen Facebook pictures of bears and things in the backyard from these cameras.
Well, the whole thing, I think, got started because of packages being stolen, and the fact that they will detect motion without ringing the doorbell, of course, is going to pick up somebody that's stealing a package.
Do you have like ongoing education for these things? Does the company kind of call everybody in for, every 6 months to introduce them to new
New
developments?
products, yes, about once a quarter. There's been a lot of activity. There's been a lot of activity with surveillance cameras now. I probably get more calls for cameras than anything else, and I've had to take training to sell those. But we do a lot of camera systems today.
Well, I know in my neighborhood there's a lot of thefts because so many people are now using online shopping. And
Right.
the packages are left on the doorstep and they're gone. And there's constant reports in the neighborhood, online newspaper or newsletter about that.
Well, it's over $1 billion a year that has been stolen. I mean, and it got a lot worse this year from last year. And there's more packages delivered this year,
Right.
probably triple what they were last year.
And tell me, Neal, in your business, has there been an increase in? I know actually that there has been a cyber attacks from, an increase from that. Is that connected to what's going on now, or is that just, because of hackers getting smarter or developing new things?
Well, I mean, they're always developing new methods and techniques as the defenses and awareness of their techniques change, and as new vulnerabilities are discovered. So it's a constantly evolving landscape that people and businesses like mine have to negotiate. So in the last year, as you know, with the situation with COVID, there's been a huge increase in the amount of online scams and attacks. People are easily preyed upon when they have something that generates a lot of emotion. And so with COVID, whether it be some kind of email about a report of a new development in COVID or vaccine, or even lately there have been a lot of emails that have been sent out trying to trick people through appointment setting for COVID vaccinations, that they're hoping to sort of gain some access to your system or to an online account through these scams, whether they be by email or on a web page that you might come across.
And how do you combat that?
Well, a few different ways. I mean, there's good practice about how to what to be aware of. Part of our program, we do provide a security awareness training where people receive a tech tip or newsletter every week in their email that sort of gets them comfortable with what is legit and what is not, and what to look for when they see an email, how to analyze it from not technically, but just there's some very obvious clues that you can look for. Then we also install some different programs on people's computers. For example, we put either at the client office or on the computer, if it's a laptop, we put on a small program that is aware of different websites and will filter out websites that are either inappropriate for work or malicious.
So the boss can keep an eye on everybody and make sure they're not having political conversations or naughty conversations. Is that?
It's not so much sort of for tracking what the person is doing or looking at or capturing information. It's more about, let's prevent people from either going to a website that could be harmful to their computer or to the business. Just protection more than surveillance.
Well, I think that's legitimate for a business to do that. After all, they pay you to be there. They pay for your time, and why shouldn't they make sure that, or at least keep temptation out of your way? So,
well, there are certain sites that I think we could say are obviously not work related, and those are the ones that we generally
like
check
eHarmony
the box into those categories. Yeah, we don't want you going to doing this at work. It could be detrimental to our healthy work environment.
when When you talk to a client, when someone calls you up and says, I'd like you to come in, we'll talk about my system, or is there a list of things you go through with them, like the security feature for one, but also this thing, not monitoring people, but ensuring that they are going to be using computers for more professional things than personal things? Or is it just someone calls you in and they have a specific problem that they want you to solve?
Typically, we're brought in when either the current provider or staff person is not performing, or there's some sort of separation in that relationship, and they're looking for a new person to give them an idea about what's possible. And generally, at the first meeting, I sit down and I just start asking questions, trying to find out what problems they've had in the past and successes, and what their goals are in their business, and how we can use technology to help them reach those goals. Once we have that, we'll do a walkthrough and look at the computer situation, try to gauge where they're at, sort of like with their maturity and technology and in cybersecurity, and then we'll see if there's interests on both parties and go from there.
Okay, it never occurred to me that they would turn you down, Neal. I have to say.
Well, I'll have to say it has happened, but also I think it's any kind of relationship is a two-way street. As an IT service provider, we do take on a lot of responsibility and liability with our clients, and so we have to make sure that we are working with people that we will be able to have a relationship with, that we can support each other.
What is the biggest issue for myself, for example, for people that work at home when it comes to cybersecurity?
I would recommend a few things. One is, everyone is working as a local administrator on their computer, and I don't necessarily think that's wise, because if something were to, if you were to click on something or make a mistake, you could easily install something that would not be helpful to you. So I think it's good to have that extra level of entering your username and password if you want to make a change, or what they call elevate your credentials. You have to have antivirus on your computer. I recommend having a password manager. A password manager is a program or service where you store your username and passwords for your different websites that you access or applications. The thing for that is, if you have a lot of applications or websites, we all do, we all have 50, 100, hundreds, you don't want to use the same password over and over. What happens is there are websites that, unfortunately, hackers are able to access, breach, it's called a breach, and then they're able to steal credentials. And then if they find one person's username and password, they'll use the same credentials at other websites. It's called credential stuffing, and they'll try to find out which websites are using the same password. They'll allow them, sometimes they get into your Gmail account, or your web account, your email account. They're able to then steal the next website and the next website, and they're able to pass down as much information they can, and cause potentially it can do some sort of wire transfer or fraud. So those are some things that we try to advocate everyone do.
If someone has a home business and they have, let's say they have 2 computers, because that's the whole extent of their business, and sort of a one-man band kind of thing. And can you come in and set them up to assure as much security as possible for that business?
Absolutely. So whether you're a home business or a business that's has a dedicated office for work, you still have a business, and you still have some amount of liability about protecting your data and your customers' data, and needs to be taken seriously regardless. So yeah, if I were to come into someone's house, I'd certainly look at what are the systems they have there and how to protect them. Similarly, we would try to protect, if it's a desktop, and try to protect the perimeter. We always try to make sure that they're using multi-factor authentication when logging into email and others, as many web services as they can. That's when you enter your username and password, and then you have to maybe enter a code that you received by text or in a special app that you have installed on your mobile phone. And we want to do our best regardless of wherever your business is. I mean, and to be honest, at this point, business is just taking place everywhere because there are very few people that are actually just doing work in their office. So we need to take that into consideration regardless of the location.
How does that work? Do you have a contract with that person so you continue to service them, or is it like a one-shot thing, or?
Well, we have two programs. One is a subscription program where we are paid a monthly fee to take care of everything in the business network, and we do a series of proactive tasks in order to help prevent issues and identify issues before they become a problem for the business. And then we have companies that pay us on an hourly basis, and those vary from home users to businesses, and we'll just come in and take care of problems as they occur.
I think. Don, what are panic buttons? I mean, I've heard of panic rooms that rich people have in their homes and to hide in, but what's the panic button?
It's just a little wireless device about the size of your car alarm, your key fob, with a button on it. When you push it down, just bumping it won't set it off. You have to push it down for a couple of seconds. But at that point, a signal goes out, either over the phone line, through the internet, or cellular.
And so if you hear someone breaking in, you push the panic button and run? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how this is.
Well, you should go into a room and close the door.
Oh, I see. That would help. Yeah.
But now when we get the signal, we call the police right away. If you set your burglar alarm off because people make mistakes, we call the customer first just to make sure they didn't goof. And if they did, they'd give us a passcode. Now we call two numbers. We call both spouses before we dispatch.
Both spouses?
Right. Because false alarms are a big issue. Not equipment related, it's human factor. Used to be equipment problems, but not anymore.
So I'm still not getting the two spouses thing. So describe that situation to me.
Well, if we call and we don't get a hold of one person, then we call the next person.
Oh, I see.
Rather than just stopping with one. I mean, if we talk to one, we don't go to the next person, obviously.
So all is well at home if you.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
And this is actually for both of you. Are there certain businesses that have special needs? And I'm thinking, doctors' offices, lawyers, where they're, especially with lawyers with cybersecurity, because I would think you'd have, issues about the paperwork that they're holding for clients. And is there any special software for that, or programs for that, or is it just the same as everybody else's?
Well, there are special applications for different industries that meet a lot of the regulatory requirements that are pushed down by the government on different types of business. Like obviously probably people are aware of HIPAA, and there are others, like if you're in manufacturing, and you work with the defense, you have to now meet the CMMC regulations around your information technology and infrastructure. So but then besides that, yes, you still have to complete a lot of the cybersecurity related tasks that we're doing now. And then if you work with a large corporation, if you're a small corporation, you work with a larger corporation, oftentimes the larger corporation has to pass on their own regulatory regime down to the smaller suppliers. So you still have a lot of work that has to be done around that for small business too. So there's some variation based on, what the industry is and who they're working with.
And Don, how about you? Have you found that, there were special requirements if you were going into a particular business? Maybe a jeweler would have certain requirements that you would normally see in a relatively small business.
I haven't done any business with jewelers for quite a while, but I can tell you this: there's some very strict requirements from their insurance companies in terms of what's required. You have to have vibration sensors on the safes, and there's just all sorts of things that are upscale than or further up as far as security is concerned. For obvious reasons. I mean, all the diamonds and everything.
Is your company better at that than other companies?
Well, I think what makes us special is we have an organization with enough people that we can supply or we can provide service on a 24-hour basis. In fact, if you had a problem right now with your alarm system, and it was a serious problem, I'll get somebody over there tonight. Or if you have just a normal issue and you're not in any big hurry, tomorrow. We never take longer than 24 hours. And I don't know any other company in our business that can consistently do that. And then we do our own monitoring. When I had my own company, I wasn't big enough to have my own monitoring. I had to sub it out. I was constantly having complaints, poor response time. At alarm detection systems, we average 17-second responses. That's incredible.
And Neal, I want to ask you, what do you feel is the competitive difference for your company from other companies?
Well, we try to do everything through our own process that we develop. Sometimes we have to develop process through specifically for individual clients that have, different software or different needs, but we try to do everything in a standardized way. And then we also have developed a set of 400 standards around technology that we then take those standards, and through an application, we look at each of our clients on a recurring basis to see if they are meeting those standards. And then we use that as a basis of evidence to make recommendations, whether that's for cybersecurity or even just a server warranty or other technical issue that might come up. And then that way the business decision maker can make a rational decision as to what's best for their business when we talk to them. So there's a combination of our standard procedures and our standards that we've developed that we feel is kind of different, sets us apart from just someone who is a reactive only service provider.
Well, gentlemen, we have exceeded our time, so thank you both for coming and giving us the insider view of both of what you do and some ideas for making ourselves feel a little bit more secure. I just want to thank all of you too for coming and listening to us, and hope you'll do so again. We're on 216thenet.com on Mondays from 12 to 12:30. And then we also have a Facebook page, Succeed in a Pandemic. So if you want to see the show on video, please just tune into the Facebook and you'll find us. Until next week, when we'll be back with some more interesting guests, I want to thank you, and thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Don, and thank you, Neal.
Thank you.
I hope business continues to do well and that you protect us all. And until then, please, everyone, stay in for a while longer and stay well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.